I think we have actually lost. Oh no, there she is. Hi, Katie.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great, sorry about that. Welcome to a sponsored webinar by Fenton Green, hosted by CPA Australia, Cyber Risk Management and Lessons from Cyber Claims for CPA Firms. My name is Katie Waller and I'm the Head of Public Practice and SME at CPA Australia. We have people joining us from all around the country for today's webinar. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners from around Australia and pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. I extend this acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, people who may be joining us from today. It is now my pleasure to invite Drew Fenton, Director at Fenton Green, and Karen Doyle, Partner at Wooten and Kearney. Today we'll be taking questions through the Q&A box. Please direct your questions to all panellists. We'll be addressing the questions at the conclusion of the event and we'll do our best given the time remaining. As Lauren mentioned, for any troubleshooting queries, please send a message to the host during the chat box. It is now time for our session to commence, and it's my pleasure to hand over to Drew Fenton.
Katie, thank you, and thanks to everyone who's joined us today. This is a workshop where I'll give you a quick introduction. Karen will do all the heavy lifting, and then we'll move on to questions and hopefully some informative answers at the end. In a general sense, we're all living in an ever-changing digital world. Those that aren't in this world have been left behind. Our problem with the digital world is that we're only in the very early stages, and the risk profile attached to the digital world is ever-changing. Out of all the risks that we deal with in the insurance world, this is the one that is changing more quickly than any other. I'd like to now take the opportunity to hand over to Karen, who will give you some, I'll step through some examples of claims that CPAs have had, and he'll present to you the problem and then the solution that he's worked through. So Karen, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thanks very much, Drew, and welcome everybody. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you today about a passion of mine, and certainly what I do day in day out, which is unfortunately assisting businesses with cyber incidents, and particularly a number of CPA businesses. So hopefully you get a lot out of today. What we're going to cover is first of all, what does incident response look like? So what does it look like for under the CPA cyber insurance scheme with Fenton Green in particular? Then we'll talk to some of the cyber trends that we're seeing at the moment in both myself and my team. We're seeing quite a few different variations of incidents at the moment, so we'll talk briefly about them. Then we'll get into a bit more of a deep dive as to what happens in a ransomware incident, and then what happens in an email compromise, and the differences and the things that you need to watch out for. And then finally, as Drew said, we will finish up with I suppose some risk management tips and tricks from me that will hopefully help your businesses be more robust and protected from cyber incidents. So what is incident response under the CPA cyber insurance policy? Well, it puts us in the role as a cyber incident manager. You might also be aware that I'm a lawyer. Watton & Kearney is a law firm. But what that does do when we're acting as an incident manager is it really does protect you as a business from leaks of information, if you like. Privilege is a big issue, particularly with cyber incidents, and having a lawyer there with you at the start really does help protect any reports that are produced from forensics or other vendor panels providers that you don't want to get out there to the general public or clients or regulators. So really our role is to help coordinate the vendors that you need Invariably, that would include an IT forensics vendor. When you've had a cyber incident, that's a bit of a no-brainer. We act in that legal capacity as well, as I said. But we've also got access to many other panel vendors under the Fenton Green and QBE scheme. So, we're really here to help you as a business get through a cyber incident, should you unfortunately experience one. Part of our role is also to help coordinate the claim submission to QBE as well, and help help you through that process, and also get assist QBE with getting that coverage position over to you as soon as possible under the policy, so you know what's covered and what isn't. So when can you contact us? You can really contact us at any time. If you've got a question about how it all works, by all means pick up the phone. The number's there on the screen. Obviously, you should contact us if you've had a potential actual cyber event, or even a data breach, and you've suspected one. Please let us know, and we're here to help you. We also help you with engaging, as I said before, the right vendors. But really, the hotline's there. You can call us at any time if you've got a cyber incident or data breach related query. So let's get on to some of the cyber trends that we're seeing at the moment in the market. It's quite an active market, as you're probably reading in the news, and there's businesses big and small being attacked at the moment. So the types of incidents that we typically see, and specifically targeting CPAs, ransomware is certainly up there at the moment, which, for those of you that are not aware of what it is, it's simply the encryption of data. A hacker will encrypt all of the data that sits on your computer systems, servers, networks, and they'll demand a ransom to unencrypt that data and let you get back to business. Also often comes with a data theft, data exfiltration risk as well, which is something we can talk about soon. Business email compromise is a different type of attack. It's an attack on your email inbox rather than your whole network. And typically it's what the motive is what we call social engineering fraud. So what they're looking to do is pretend to be someone that they're not, and get money either from you or from a supplier or a client. We also see straight data breaches. Some threat actors will simply hack into your systems because they want to get access to your data. They want your data. They don't necessarily want money from you, but they'll monetize that data in some way, shape, or form. We often also see data breaches which don't involve a cyber incident, such as inadvertently sending an email to the wrong person. You might send an email to the wrong client, and it's got some data, some personal information in there about them. That could trigger an obligation as a data breach. What I'm going to focus on today are the first two, and I suppose just to go a little bit deeper into the trends that we're seeing with ransomware. So the frequency has really shot up in the last year and a half, particularly during the pandemic. Not necessarily related, but it's just where the focus area of threat actors is at the time, at this particular time. The size of the ransom demands are going up. Usually the ransom demands are demanded in Bitcoin. So most of you would know how volatile that currency is, cryptocurrency. But overall the size of the demands have gone up last year, and we're continuing to see that occur as a trend. Also the size of what's paid as opposed to what's demanded is also going up as well. We're also seeing large organizations being attacked as well as small organizations. So there's a market here for threat actors that are, what you call sort of more corporate focused, big game hunting threat actors, and you've got, the the smaller SME type hackers, you know, what we call ransomware as a service, where you've got a main group of the threat actor who sells the tools required to other hackers to use their tools, and quite often they're a little bit more sophisticated, but they're often matching sort of their size to the size of their target, so that, you know, the SME end of the spectrum. Since 2020, we've really seen a shift in the leverage that's used in a ransomware event. It used to be that encryption of the data was really the leverage that threat actors used. So they would use the fact that they've got control of your systems and to elicit the payment of the demand. However, a lot of organizations have gotten better at being able to bounce back from ransomware attacks. So now threat actors have evolved to data theft or data exfiltration, as we call it in the industry. And what that means is, you know, before they encrypt your systems, they will take data from you. Usually they'll be looking for sensitive data and often about your clients. They'll use that data to potentially sell it on the dark web, or simply just publish it online with the threat of publishing if the demand is not met, which, you know, could cause embarrassment to either your company or clients or other business partners or all of the above. And in fact, you know, the report from this year, in fact, Q1 this year, suggests that 77% of incidents now involve a threat to publish data. So it's really a shift from, you know, the focus of the threat actors from, you know, locking up your systems to now taking data and using that as the leverage these days. We've also seen a number of multi-party or multi-aggregated events beginning to occur. Some of you may be aware of the Kaseya breach, which was actually a software provider that provides software to IT providers, including many in Australia. And, you know, what the threat actors do there is target a supplier of services, an IT services provider, which can then impact multiple clients. So it's something to, you know, certainly for you as CPAs and particularly some of you as small businesses, to be particularly aware of that, you know, your IT provider is often quite vulnerable and often, you know, that vulnerability can have a downstream impact on you. Talking about the trends in business email compromise, so it's somewhat plateaued as a threat last year. Doesn't mean it's gone away. We're still seeing quite a few email compromises, but it certainly hasn't. It's been overtaken for sure by ransomware in terms of a volume threat. Phishing emails are still the biggest threat with business email compromise. It's a very simple attack, which I'll show you shortly how it works. Credential stuffing is also on the rise with business email compromise. What that means is using threat actors relying on people's propensity to use the same password across multiple accounts. So say using your Netflix password, you know, to log into your work computer. If you use the same one and Netflix is compromised and they've got your password for Netflix, they'll try it for your work environment as well. So we're seeing that more and more. As I said before, it's predominantly used for social engineering fraud and invoicing fraud, which we'll get to in a second, and I'll go into a bit more detail about that. But it also usually involves inadvertently sometimes a data breach involving whatever information is in the inbox. Usually people don't realize how much sensitive information is actually in there. It's quite an unregulated amount of not just personal information, but also confidential information about your business or business partners and that sort of thing, or even about your personal life as well that you don't want people to know about. So we'll focus on these two threats in particular. as we move through the slides today. So focusing on ransomware to begin with. So what happens in a ransomware incident? You log on to your computer, you come into work, you log into computer, or as it is in COVID world, in lockdown world, you walk into the front room and or you study, log into your computer, and your background looks different. It's blackened. There might be a note on the background of your computer asking you to open a particular file. And it'll often be a README file, notepad file, just like that, like what's on the screen there. So something, you must know by this particular point in time that something's happened. Usually it freaks a lot of people out seeing this, particularly with the change in the background as well. Quite often people will try to open files and realize that they can't open the files, and you'll see that the extension of the file names that you're trying to open has been changed. So it will have an extra dot, whatever usually the threat actor's software is called, malware is called. So that's normally a bad sign that you're not going to be able to get on with your day, unfortunately, and your week and possibly the next few weeks. So this is a typical ransom note that you would find if you had suffered a ransomware incident. It's not a real one. We've made it up so to protect everyone involved in real life situations, but it is based upon the ransom notes that we do see, and it will usually either demand the sum in the actual note itself or ask you to contact the threat actor to start a dialogue with them about paying some money to them, whether that's via some sort of web portal or over email. So what do you do when you receive this? So I think most businesses, most people panic. Going into panic mode is a very obvious and normal reaction that we often see. We don't often see people ignoring it, although we have had instances before where it hasn't necessarily been picked up, particularly during the recent Sydney lockdowns. We had an incident recently where a business didn't actually know that they'd been hit because they're not completely reliant on their computer systems, or haven't been able to trade because of the lockdown. So they didn't necessarily ignore it, but they didn't realize until they went into the office to pick up to print some stuff from their systems, from their servers in the office. So ignoring those generally not a reaction we do see. It's pretty typical to search who the threat is. Get your iPhone out and look for who it might be. If you've got an incident response plan already, hopefully you might get that out, and that might help you at least with some initial steps while you're catching your breath and you're trying to stop yourself from panicking. There's various options there already, as I said, on the ransomware note. You can click the link or email the threat actor depending on what the request, the call for action is in the note. We have had businesses do that before, or even just go and pay the Bitcoin straight away to get their systems back up. Neither's really a good thing to do in this situation without some assistance from experts. That leaves only really two options left there on the screen. Quite often we see there in the bottom left purple box, sorry, not box, circle, that quite often the natural reaction from a business, particularly a small business, is to call their IT provider, usually a managed service provider, outsourced. That's a typical reaction, and something that at least sort of from a business's perspective might help at least identify what's going on. But certainly in our experience, whilst there's varying degrees of expertise with IT providers, normally they're experts in providing you with the infrastructure to run your business, but not necessarily cybersecurity experts, and particularly breach response experts. So of course, what we would always recommend is you get the experts in who do this day in, day out, like ourselves, and call, in this case, the CPA Insurer Breach Response Hotline, which will give you access to myself and my team within an hour. So you call the hotline. Let's talk about recovery, because the first thing you want when you've got a ransomware event is you want to know when you're going to be back up and running, right? You want to get back to business. You're not able to do much, and you might be able to do some things offline. You might have some paper files you can work from, but I think in 2021, almost all businesses are almost wholly reliant on their computer networks and particularly the data that sits in them. So recovery is usually the first thing that a business that's been impacted by a ransomware event starts to think about: how quickly can I recover? So let's talk about the steps. First of all, detection. So detecting an incident occurred, pretty simple. You'll know that you've had a ransomware incident once you get that note, and certainly particularly if you do pick up the phone, as I said, natural reaction to such a note is to contact your IT provider. They will probably quickly identify that you've had a ransomware incident, and even they might be able to help you identify who it is and the extent of the incident. It's very important, however, as I said, to get the experts involved straight away. Your IT provider is a good resource for information about how the system is set up, but getting us, and particularly our forensic providers, involved early will help identify and detect who the threat actor is, which is an important step for then containing the incident, because then based on experience we'll know what the MO is of that threat actor, and really we move very swiftly from detection to containment mode. Contain the spread of the impact, make sure that computers are not all turned on if you've got other employees, and you're the first one in the office or the first one to log in, making sure that they're not loading up their systems, because if they're all connected, they'll all get impacted by the incident. So containing the incident is a crucial step in the first 24 hours, 7 hours, first hour, first minute of detecting the incident. So really very quickly does it escalate, and really that's why we're encouraging you to contact us as soon as possible. Once the incident is at least contained, so we know where it's hit and where it hasn't hit and where it's spread and not, then we're looking at the forensics and also the recovery steps. Now, they usually happen in tandem. One can't really proceed without the other, and they really should be happening at the same time. But you don't want to recover too quickly without having any view on what the forensics say, because we've had many businesses before that have recovered from a backup within the first day and then just get reinfected. Not only that, it even gets worse, because the threat actors now know where your backups are because you've recovered from them, and they'll look for them and they'll try and infect them too. And once the backups are gone, it makes it very difficult and makes it really hard to not look at anything but a rebuild. A rebuild is not a good option in this scenario. Sometimes it's the only option, recovering from a ransomware incident, but it's very costly and very time consuming. So rebuild is what we're looking to avoid there. So that's why it's important to get forensics involved early, because the forensics can at least give a preliminary view of the obvious artifacts or evidence that the attacker has left behind, and trying to really understand who they are, what they did, why they were in there, how long they were in there for, how far did they get, what they've touched, what they've impacted. The forensic investigation may take much longer than the recovery, and hopefully for your business's sake, the recovery is very quick. But we can't have it being too quick, because sometimes if it's too quick, it means that there could have been something that might have been missed. So it's very important for that forensics and recovery to happen simultaneously. So just talking about some of the other issues that pop up in a ransomware incident, the outage is obviously the first thing that's front of mind. How long am I going to be out for? How long am I not going to have my systems available for? Some incidents only do affect a small part of the network, and if we've done a good job of containing the incident to only a small number of desktop servers, whatever the case may be, then in theory the recovery and therefore the outage period should be much quicker or much shorter. However, if the incident's complex and it's been able to spread, then you could be offline for months, and we've certainly seen incidents that have been where the client has been out for a significant period of time, which can be quite damaging to their business. And I've said this many times, but it's very important to get the right experts involved very early on, because it will, in my experience at least, mitigate the extent of the outage. The quicker you get the experts involved, usually the quicker you can bounce back and recover. It's often as well, depending on the sophistication of the threat actor, and we have seen quite sophisticated threat actors hit small businesses in the past, perhaps as collateral damage from a larger incident. Sometimes the forensics can be quite involved and require some extensive endpoint detection and monitoring, what we call in the industry EDR tools. EDR is a tool that is slowly replacing, in my opinion, antivirus, and certainly something that you should think about as investing in before you have an incident. But quite often the forensic teams that get involved do need to bring in their endpoint detection and monitoring tools to make sure that the threat actor has been eradicated and not, there's no remnants of them in your system. But that forensic investigation, as I said before, it can take a while. Hopefully we can recover quickly, as quickly as possible, so the outage is minimized, the impact on your business from a day-to-day BAU perspective is minimized. But sometimes the forensic analysis, depending on the complexity of the incident and the sophistication of the threat actor, can take a while. You can imagine that the threat actors are usually looking to also cover their tracks. So uncovering those tracks can often be quite difficult. With ransomware, particularly with now the propensity for threat actors to take data, it really does bring into play regulators. The main one that we often see in play with a ransomware incident, particularly where there's a data theft, is the OAIC, the Privacy Commissioner. And if there is a threat of data, it will usually involve the investigation of that of the extent of the data theft, because then you will have a requirement to consider whether you need to notify the Privacy Commissioner and also affected individuals, the people that the data is about, which often is your clients. There's other regulators that also have a stake in these types of incidents. Particularly relevant to CPAs is the ATO as well. It's often one that we're working with, particularly with TFNs being quite an attractive target, a data target for threat actors. So there's many, but there's many other government agencies and regulators that get involved in incidents, depending on the seriousness of it. Regulators are also becoming very active with cyber incidents. We've even seen regulators now reaching out to businesses that don't even know yet that they've been attacked, that are warning them that they have been attacked, or we're seeing regulators reach out to businesses if they hit them press, and that can not just mean mainstream press, but also industry press as well. And there's a lot of types of press that are out there at the moment in the broader internet. So it's not just your Australians, AFRs, Sydney Morning Heralds, The Ages, etc. newspapers that the OAIC and other regulators react to. But they're all over the speed of the response to the investigation at the moment. So it's very important, as I said before, to if you've had one of these incidents, get experts involved early, not just to help you recover, but also it helps with if you do need to notify the regulators about the incident, you'll be able to say that you reacted quickly to the threat, and you got experts in helping you investigate. And that's often a very good thing to fall back on when you're notifying these regulators, particularly if the forensic investigation takes a long time and you have to unfortunately notify them out of time. Data retention is also an issue that the OAIC in particular is particularly all over at the moment. So the simple tip for me is don't hold on to data you no longer need, because if that data is impacted in an incident like this, then we'll have to also manage that issue with the OAIC as well. Communications is also very important in a ransomware incident. If an outage has occurred, your stakeholders will want information, particularly your clients will want to know what's happened. If you're able to respond and react quickly and get the business back up and running, perhaps your clients never know that there's been an outage, and they may never need to know that there's been a ransomware incident that's occurred. But the longer you're out, the longer that it visibly affects your business, the more that customers may start to ask questions. You might then have regulators being involved, asking questions, employees as well, if you've got employees. It's very key to also trying to manage your employees, and because they can be just as much of a leak of information as customers, and sometimes as we've discussed, the media as well. It's very important to manage the communications up front and have a strategy for how you communicate, or conversely having a strategy for not communicating in the appropriate scenarios, because it's not always appropriate to go out and tell the world that you've had an incident. Sometimes there's no need to do that. And particularly with regulators, we often see that businesses jump too quickly to notifying regulators, whereas regulators will usually give you enough time to work out what happened before you actually go to them. But it's very important to have that strategy, and it's something that we help with in our role, and if required, we get PR and communication experts in to assist you with that as well. And just finally on ransomware, just finishing up on some of the losses that can be incurred. So you've got system rectification losses and costs. That can be quite significant depending on the severity of the incident and how it's hit you, particularly, as I said before, with rebuilds. They are quite expensive and costly. Business interruption, financial loss. If you're out for a significant period of time, you may suffer loss of profit because you're not able to trade in the normal fashion. So those types of losses are something that if you've got a long, we're obviously as part of our role trying to mitigate those losses, but it's something that we often find is an unfortunate consequence of one of these attacks. And then there's many costs that are incurred, obviously forensic investigation costs, legal costs, communication experts if they're required, other specialist vendors if we're looking at negotiating, or not even negotiating, but just talking to the threat actor. We often bring in a separate vendor for that. Credit monitoring, ID monitoring costs, the cost can really stack up with one of these incidents. So it's really important to try and avoid it as much as possible, and put steps in place to prevent one of these attacks. We are also starting to see more and more customers starting to want to bring claims, or even bring claims against a breached party, particularly in situations where perhaps the customer has felt that the business didn't handle the incident as well as they should have, or they didn't protect their data in the way that they expected. There's a lot more I could talk about on ransomware, but we might just stop there and move on to email compromise. I can see the questions are flooding in, so we'll try and cover as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. So just talking about business email compromise, it's something that we do see in particular CPAs being hit with quite often, not as often as ransomware, but it's certainly something that we see occurring quite often because it's quite a simple attack. So everyone, I'm assuming, has probably received a phishing email before. This is one that you would typically receive pretending to be Microsoft, asking you to click on a link. In particular, this one's asking you to update your security. It looks quite genuine. It's got logos and everything that look right, and asks you to click on that link. You can see, though, however, in this particular email, the email is coming from a slightly unusual email address. So it's normally a good indicator that it might not be genuine. You click on the link, it opens you up to this web page. Looks again like a genuine Microsoft Office 365 page, asking for your email account and your password. So you enter in those details and click sign in. And then what happens is that it takes you to the genuine Microsoft Office 365 page. Looks like nothing's actually happened. It looks like you've logged into something, but you haven't actually logged into something. It's just taking you to the Microsoft page. Again, another tip here is if you do click on these links, often clicking on the link isn't enough to compromise your email, but if you do click on the link, you'll see that the website address up the top it doesn't look like a Microsoft address at all, and that's normally a key sign that it's a phishing email. However, you do enter in your details. Think nothing of it because nothing happened, so you might just delete the email. You're busy, and so you move on with the rest of your day. A few days later, you receive this email from a supplier who had previously sent you an invoice, and they're now sending you an email saying, can you update the bank details for that payment of the invoice? So you do, and then you make the payment to the new bank account. Then 2 weeks later, you get an email from the genuine supplier. In this case, his name's Alan, and Alan's chasing the payment of the invoice. I sent you an invoice 3 weeks ago. It was it had 14-day payment terms. Why I received the money. You might have an email exchange with him saying, I did transfer it, no, I didn't receive it. Call him, whatever the case may be. You'll eventually work out that you must have paid someone, but not him. So you call your IT provider to investigate, and it turns out that you realize that the email that you clicked on wasn't genuine, or maybe you might not even remember what the email was because you had a busy day at that time. But either way, your emails have been compromised, and you've been tricked into making this payment to a threat actor and not to your supplier. So you've had what's called what we call BEC, a business email compromise, or just email compromise. What that means is that they've had access to your mailbox for the period of time from the time that you gave over the passwords into that, your email address and your password into that web page, that fake web page, all the way through to the time you change your password. At least someone's had access, unauthorized access to your mailbox. And what they will do, and in this particular scenario that I've just explained, is typically they're looking for payments that are due, either due by you to someone, so say a supplier, or due to you from, I don't know, a client or someone, and looking to intercept that email communication and looking to redirect that money as they have done in this example. In doing that, what they do is the threat actors monitor your emails. It doesn't always necessarily mean that someone's sitting, an actual person sitting at the other end of a computer monitoring those emails, but it could be a bot. But they're monitoring your emails in some way, shape, or form. And if they've locked onto a particular target, in this case the supplier email, they'll set up rules looking to exfiltrate emails, and then and what they'll do is they'll redirect those emails. So if they're communicating on your behalf to the supplier, or if they're pretending to be the supplier to convince you to transfer money, they'll make sure that you don't see the fraudulent emails. You only see the emails that you need to see, which is why they set up these rules. And then they'll send emails on your behalf. There's many things that this results in. We've just talked through a false invoicing scenario. The other scenario that's typical, of course, is if you've got a bigger organization, a few employees, it might be an invoice approval, so that an internal email where you're getting the boss or the CFO of an organization to approve the payment of the fake invoice rather than it being an external supplier or client attack. We also see client attacks where, in the case of CPAs, for example, if you're changing the client's bank details for a tax refund, seen that quite often, where the client then blames you for the fact that they didn't receive their refund. We also see phishing attacks as well, being the email account rather being used for phishing attacks, which is also quite often a way that the email compromise is actually discovered in the first place. But really importantly, what it does often mean is that because they've been monitoring your emails, they've probably also taken at least some data, some emails, and they've probably reviewed some emails in your mailbox as well. And if they've actually accessed your email account using a particular type of connection, they might also have taken an offline copy of your mailbox, a complete copy of it, so they've got access to everything that you have in your mailbox at any point in time, even if you've kicked them out within a matter of days of discovering the email breach. So data risk, not just the invoicing fraud, is a very big risk here as well. So the next steps in this type of scenario is obviously to commence a forensic investigation, try and work out how long they've been in there for, what they've done, what rules were set up, what their motives were, what they were targeting, and crucially, what type of connection that they had to the mailbox. So you can understand, did they have access to the entire mailbox, or just a number of smaller emails, a smaller number of emails that might not create a huge data risk. Engaging a law firm then is also quite important to help with monitoring and assessing that data risk. Just briefly touching upon the Privacy Act notifiable data breach scheme, which is often where we get turned to, as I said, with these email compromises. Once with once we've completed the forensic investigation, all CPAs, whether or not you are required to comply with the Privacy Act, because you might fall under the turnover thresholds. If you handle TFN data, you should know by now that the Privacy Act will still apply to you, particularly because of the sensitivity of PFNs. So following the data breach scheme is very important. Understanding in particular that you've got 30 days to investigate under the Privacy Act. And as I said before, the OAIC in particular is all over the time that is the take to investigate these incidents these days. So getting onto that as soon as possible is important, because then the forensic investigation will help us understand what the exposure to the data was how widespread was the access, and then and then what, depending on what data it was, and many other factors, is there serious harm to those individuals, and or have you been able to also take remedial action to prevent the risk of the incident, of the serious harm rather to the individuals. So OAIC notification is often something that's required in these instances. You might also still have the supplier chasing you for funds, coming back to the facts that we were just discussing before. So you may need assistance with that as well. As well as client engagement, and coming back to the similar theme from the ransomware scenario. Client engagement is quite important. They might, in this scenario, clients won't necessarily know, unless they've perhaps received a phishing email purporting to be from you. They won't know that you've had an email breach, but you might at some point have to notify them. So managing that reputational harm that might come with notifying your clients, and a perception perhaps that data isn't safe is very important. And sometimes that can lead to a risk of a claim from a client if they think that sensitive data of theirs has been exposed. And more there's a public push to better protect individuals and their information. So it's only a matter of time before we see more and more of these types of client claims. So we're slowly running out of time, so I'll just move quickly through some key risk management tips and tricks from me. So there's a lot you can do before an incident happens, well before, in fact, do it now. Look at developing an incident response plan. It can be as simple as having 4 or 5 steps you might take. It might even be just one step, which is called, if you've got a CPA cyber insurance policy, call the hotline. But make sure you know what you're going to do if one of these happens. At least have a couple of bullet points down on paper. Also, employee training is critical. Training yourself, training your employees, being aware and keep up to date of what cyber risks are out there, phishing attacks, what types of attacks there are, making sure that any new employees or even suppliers for that matter are onboarded, so they're aware of what the risks are, because you're only as strong as your weakest link in terms of employees. From an IT perspective, patch those systems. Those patches that come through, as annoying as sometimes they can be, they're there for a reason. Normally they're asking you to patch your system to safeguard you from attack. So just make sure that you're doing it. Also make sure that you're not running outdated software. If you're running an old Windows system, look at upgrading it to the newest, because if it's outdated, patching won't always work. Password complexity, make sure you have complex passwords, change them regularly, and don't reuse them from different accounts. Don't use that Netflix or Disney Plus password for your work environment. And preserve those backups. Those backups, particularly in ransomware, are very, very important. So make sure they're preserved. Make sure they're disconnected overnight to the extent that you have to connect them physically. Forensic investigations, preserve evidence. Quite often we get, as I said before, the IT provider is contacted first before us. But if you do contact them, make sure that they're preserving the evidence of what occurred, because it might compromise the forensic investigation if they don't. And log retentions. Logs are evidence. make sure that you talk to your IT provider about having a log retention policy on your emails and on your systems as well, because it helps us understand what actually occurred. And finally, be aware of the supply chain risk and outsourcing. You know, who are you outsourcing to? What are their protections? What are they doing to protect you? Do they have legal obligations to notify if there's an incident, to tell you about the incident? And what are their requirements to protect you? It's very, very important. So I think we're slowly running out of time. So I'm just going to quickly hand back over now to Drew to talk very briefly about insurance before we get to the Q&A.
Thank you, Karen. Look, for all those that are listening, we can obviously see this is a complex matter. If we just briefly speak about insurance, in insurance world, we talk about risk first. If we look through the community, my view would be that accountants are at the top of the risk profile, not because of their systems or their complexities of business, but basically because of the data that you hold. You hold my tax file number, you hold my bank account details, you have my digital footprint. So to me, risk high because of the data that you hold. If we talk about risk, we then move through the insurance market has come up with various insurance products named cyber. Without question, this is, in my view, post the regulatory obligations you have in relation to insurance, the most important one that you should consider, and in my view, certainly take out. Karen, could I ask you to just transfer that next slide over? As Karen's already gone through, these are the basic principles of a good cyber policy. It provides you with experts in each of these areas to assist you through a difficult environment. I was just taking a couple of notes. I suggest to you the environment of cyber hacking is a bit like our COVID environment. It's ever changing, and the virus that was out there last week has now been superseded by somebody else. Please consider cyber insurance. Please note there are also other, there are certainly differences in each of the insurer's policies. So please be careful about taking a comprehensive cover. Now, I'll just hand back to Ketty, who will run a quick Q&A for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew and Karen. And there's certainly been no shortage of key takeouts and great pieces of information to come through today. We do know, without a question, have a number of queries that have come through from the members. So I'll just start off with, Kieran, what is the difference between endpoint detection and antivirus?
Yeah, it's a great question. So antivirus is your traditional software that helps, with virus monitoring, incoming endpoints to the system to, to prevent sort of a virus from, perpetuating on the system. It's really the traditional type of software that prevents, that was designed to prevent attacks, to be honest. But endpoint detection and monitoring is the advancement of antivirus. So it's a tool that sits on your system that will hopefully not just try and repel attacks, but also if they're on there, contain them without having to need someone on your systems, a physical person to actually a forensic provider actually get in there. So it's a forensic tool as opposed to a virus tool, if that makes sense. It usually comes with the virus tools as well. So it's something that's been commoditized more and more, and it's certainly something that I think will be available. It's already available, these tools, but they'll continue to evolve and become cheaper as antivirus did 20, 30 years ago.
Great, thank you. Does disconnecting physically from the internet and power supply not help to freeze the position of being hacked?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. But the problem is that if they've already got in there and encrypted the system, then whether you disconnect or not is not going to matter, because they've already done the damage on the computer. But it is an important step to take if you do suspect that there's been an attack, if you've got other devices and endpoints that are connected to the same system. I wouldn't turn them on, and I'd disconnect from the internet straight away.
Great, thank you. How successful has it been to detect a cyber attack, and what actions have been taken to strongly deter the attacker from future attacks?
Well, I mean, the steps that you mean, I suppose from a government perspective, there's a lot of work going on at the moment about particularly around small business, but also big business too, about what regulations and steps that and laws that can be put in place to mandate and regulate good cyber hygiene and security. So that's a discussion that's ongoing at the moment from a government perspective. But otherwise, what you can do day in, day out is make sure that you've got the right IT managed service provider on board that understands these risks. We see a whole suite of IT providers in these incidents that some are all across cyber security. Others, I'd have to say, let their clients down, unfortunately. So it's making sure you've got the right provider on board, and some of those tips that I gave at the end are very critical to very small things, some of them, but can be often the difference between suffering a cyber attack or not.
And I'll just time for one quick more last one. With most platforms now being cloud-based, does this help to negate in some ways against ransomware?
Well, cloud, it doesn't really negate ransomware. It's more a sort of a backup tool, if you like. Cloud is great. Is it better than other forms of backup? It depends on the business's situation. The most important thing is you can have physical backups. You can have an offsite backup on-prem, whatever the setup is. As long as it's physically disconnected from your main environment, that's the most important thing, because and cloud does allow you the ability to do that, unless the cloud account has hacked itself and they've got access to it. Because say the credentials for the cloud account are stored on the computer somewhere. But the most important thing is having segregated backups and networks from your network, because you don't want those backups being infected if unfortunately you get hit with a ransomware event. It really does cripple your ability to bounce back quickly.
Thanks, Kieran. I think there is no underestimating the importance of this topic and cybersecurity, and I think Drew is really critical with his points around the information and the data that you hold on your behalf of clients does make you a prime target, regardless of the systems and other things you have in place. So it is a really important area. I know it's something that we will be looking at closely in terms of further support and information we can provide members. There were a few questions we unfortunately didn't get to, Kieran, so if we could be kind enough to maybe send you those questions and we could get some draft answers to send out to everyone who's joined us today. But I'd like to say a sincere thank you to yourself, Kieran, and to Drew for taking us through today. I think you've provided some invaluable insights and some really critical and key takeaways. And I'd really encourage everyone who's taken part today to really, pick up on those key takeaways and make sure you're implementing back into your businesses and practices. So thanks again, Kieran and Drew. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ketty, Drew, and Kieran, and thank you to everyone for your participation.
In the next 3 working days, you'll receive an evaluation survey accompanied by the recording of this webinar. We really appreciate your feedback as it is extremely valuable to CPA Australia to help us deliver better events for you. Thanks again, and we look forward to welcoming you to another CPA Australia webinar soon.